Hello, everyone, and welcome to Whiskey Uncorked. My name is Brian, and we're back today with another Scotch whiskey review. This time, we will be reviewing a distillery that is not well known by most people. I'm guessing if you're an enthusiast and you're watching this channel, you're at least aware of it. But it's a distillery that doesn't do many, if any, official releases, at least not that we can get here in the States. But we're going to be taking a look at Benrinnes today from a well-respected line of independent bottlings in the Signatory Unchill Filtered collection. So if you aren't familiar with Benrinnes, they are a Scotch distillery located in the Speyside region. They're owned by Diageo, and the primary reason why I think people love Benrinnes, the people that have been able to discover it, is they use worm tub condensers as a part of the distillation process. So I know that many of you are likely familiar with worm tub condensers. However, if you aren't, they are basically, there's a couple methods for turning the vapor from the stills back into liquid. Shell and tube and worm tub condensers are, generally speaking, the most common kind. Worm tub condensers were more common back in the day, so there's not that many distilleries that still use them. I think it's somewhere in the teens. I can't remember exactly, 13, 17, somewhere in there. There's only a few, and typically what they do is they make the actual spirit, the actual whiskey, a new make, more meaty, a little bit more sulfury on its own. Sometimes sulfur can come from like sherry casks and whatnot, but they can actually get that just through the spirit as well. Not all worm tub distilleries end up with this kind of meaty, savory, sulfury flavor profile. There's other aspects of the process that can affect that quite a bit, but Benrinnes is definitely known for a meaty, sulfury character. So Benrinnes is one of these distilleries where Diageo does not release official bottling per se. It is part of their flora and fauna line. The 43%, probably chill filtered, probably colored in most cases. I know there's some debate there where maybe it's a little bit more natural than the ABV would imply, given that it's a Diageo product. But anyways, that's kind of besides the point. It's 16 years old, and which is a great age statement from the flora and fauna. But it's not here in the States, so getting a bottle, yeah, it's a little bit more complicated just because you have to pay the extra shipping and the things I've talked about 100 times. The struggles of an American Scotch whiskey enthusiast. So it's possible the closest cousin to Benrinnes being a Speyside that uses worm tub condensers would be like Mortlach. And yeah, I would agree that these two distilleries tend to be within the same area of flavor and whatnot. If you like Mortlach, you probably are going to like Benrinnes, and if you like Benrinnes, you're probably going to like Mortlach. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this specific bottle. So I picked this up last year. This was part of an overseas order. Checking my records, it was the Really Good Whiskey Company that I picked it up from. I was probably buying something else. I was probably ordering. In fact, I think I know what it was now that I think about it. But yeah, shipping's crazy, and the best way to kind of alleviate some of that problem shipping from the UK or a UK company is to get multiple bottles, because the shipping price is going to be the shipping price up to like usually like 6 bottles or something. So if you can spread that out across multiple bottles, that's going to make it at least somewhat more reasonable. So usually what I do is I'll take a look around the site. If there's something I really, really, really want, then I'll add that. But if there's still room in my cart or in what was going to be my box to ship over, I'll start looking at the independent bottlings and see if they have any bottlings from distilleries that either I have not had anything from yet, or if they have one of my favorite distilleries. Obviously, I could just kind of fill out the order that way. And these are really great options because this is another one of these bottles, similar to the Dalyuan bottle that I reviewed in my very first review. This is not a cask strength edition. This is actually 46% ABV, and it's a vatting of 2 casks. So let's check out the other stats on the bottle just to get that out of the way. So this is 12 years old. It was distilled in 2010, distilled in September of 2010, bottled in March of 2023. This is casks number 104 and 106, and it says matured in first fill Oloroso sherry butts dash finish. So this is a finished whiskey. I imagine they took a number of bourbon barrels or refill barrels and filled up a couple of the sherry butts, and then they blended those two together. It's 46% ABV. This is bottle number 475. I don't know how many bottles there are, but given that these were sherry butts, 2 of them, I'm guessing this is probably over 1,000 bottles of this. But regardless, this is a sherry forward whiskey. We'll talk about that more a little bit, but I want to talk about these style of bottles, at least from my relatively limited experience with these 46% unchill filtered collection bottlings. From what I can tell, or what I've gathered, that these tend to be aimed, the purpose behind them is to create something that is representative of the distillery and what they would probably release if Diageo were to release a quality 46% non-chill filtered, all the things, official bottling. It was kind of that case with the Del Ewan bottle. That was bourbon forward, very malty, very kind of Glencairn 10-y. This is a little bit more sherry forward, again similar to Mortlock. Diageo, when they do release these sorts of things, the dirty worm tub distilleries, they tend to combine that with sherry casks. And generally speaking, I think these are pretty darn safe purchases, right? This isn't a one-off single barrel cask strength where it's just you're getting what you're getting. This has at least been thought through to some degree, I guess. Obviously, there's a finish on this, and then two barrels blended together. So you're going to get at least something that's had some control from someone blending. And I think in the instances where I've gotten to try these whiskeys, in every case, you're getting something that's going to be pretty well balanced and probably a good alternative to your regular kind of 10, 12-year-old introductory offerings from official releases. So let's get this poured. And while I do this, one thing that I didn't notice is I've probably had this bottle for about a year. And as I've mentioned before, I don't go through bottles super fast. I have a couple hundred bottles between scotch and bourbon. I think it's definitely over 200. I don't remember the exact number that I have open. I'm trying to get it down. We're in Operation Bottle Kill summer time to kind of prepare for the upcoming fall, where there'll probably be a bunch of stuff open. But I probably am finishing this off in about a year, which is fairly unusual. So I kind of had to think about that a little bit. Like, man, I went through this pretty fast. But in reality, it's a somewhat unremarkable bottle overall. Not that it isn't good, we'll get to that. But what I found was, well, anytime I was going to drink some sherry whiskeys, or if I was going to do a bit of a sherry flight or whatever, I was in the mood for a sherry whiskey, I think I ended up just kind of going towards this bottle more often than I realized. So for a warm-up dram, an opening dram in terms of a night of sherry whiskeys or whatever I was going to be doing that night, I reached past some other bottles that would have done a pretty fantastic job in that regard as well, and just kept grabbing this one. And as I mentioned, that was a little unusual, because in my mind, I never really thought that this was a standout, let's say. But here we are. The bottle is now empty. For me, going through a bottle in a year, possibly, maybe even a little less, probably maybe a little bit more. Again, I don't remember. I don't record the month that I bought it in or when I opened it, but I know I got it. I probably spring last year, and it's gone. So that's got to be some sort of an endorsement for it, because it is a good whiskey. But let's get into the nose and the tasting notes and give this thing a score. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about Benrinnes when we're done, or at least I already have my next bottle of Benrinnes open, because it is an up-and-coming distillery for me. Not up-and-coming in their own right. They've been making whiskey for a really, really long time. But just in terms of my understanding of it and really kind of starting to develop a love for it. But yeah, let's see what it smells like today. So, before I just keep sticking my nose in the glass and thinking about it, there's really two things that are kind of happening in here. There's this really standard Oloroso sherry nose combined with this fairly subtle but obviously present kind of sweet and savory nose. So the sweet and savory part of it is, I was trying to put my finger on exactly what I was smelling. And the best I could kind of come up with is like a teriyaki beef jerky. Like it's sweet and it's savory, and it's just kind of like, so when you first open the bag and you just kind of get that whiff of specifically teriyaki beef jerky because of the kind of the amped up savoriness. But it's really well combined with a fairly straightforward Oloroso nose. I was kind of hoping I was going to find maybe a little bit more barrel spice, given that we're talking about sherry butts here. Hoping that meant that there was going to be some European oak influence. It does come out on the palate a little bit, but on the nose, you're talking about something that's pretty well rounded. It's full. It's got a kind of one of those smooth but filling nose feels, I guess. It's gentle, but yeah, I'm not struggling to nose it. But there's no burn, no spice. It's just a bunch of kind of really round and rich flavors, which I think kind of goes into what I'm going to end up coming to this conclusion with why this bottle kind of disappeared relatively quickly for me. And that's because it's just easy. But it's still an experience. So let's jump into the palate and see what we're picking out. I already know this is a pretty consistent bottle, but I'm not expecting any surprises. But let's see what's happening. Cheers. Yeah, pretty much exactly what I've come to know this bottle to be. It almost drinks a little bit louder than 46%. Not hot. It's not because of the alcohol. It is full flavored. Similar to the nose, there's just a kind of a density to it overall. But you are getting your fairly traditionally sweet Scotch flavors with some pretty traditional Oloroso flavors with just this kind of punchy, no, punchy's not the right word, but this very kind of dense kind of soy sauce savoriness thrown in there as well. The flavor itself, it's pretty big on the back half, but it's not, you do get more kind of the wood spice, but it's not hot at all. The alcohol, this is an easy drinker that lets you know you're drinking a good high ABV. I mean, 46% is still high alcohol content comparatively, right? Full flavored, not hot. There's a little bit of spice there, which I really appreciate. It kind of helps break up the smoothness on the nose, which I think on the palate I appreciate a little bit more. But let's go in for a second sip and see what else we're picking up. So I think, as expected with a Speyside, because I don't think of Benrinnes as your traditional Speyside, but it is. It's been around a long time. It's been in Speyside and has helped kind of define the profile. There's a lot of honey. There's a big kind of honey note on the front of the palate. And that second sip, a little less spicy, but which I think it's just kind of settling in for me now. Yeah, honey all the way through. Richness, and that the savory quality is, again, it's so well done. Like, sometimes I wonder, like, this feels like it's an accident, but you kind of know it's not. It just in the manufacturing or production process, I guess, where it's like, yeah, the character of Benrinnes is here, but it's really the sherry quality. It's not a sherry bomb, it's close-ish, and then the strength of the Benrinnes spirit is able to just kind of peek through via that kind of savory, slightly. I don't pick things up as sulfur necessarily, but Benrinnes is known to be sulfury. Yeah, I just really like that kind of combination of things that are happening. It's not quite as... It doesn't quite stand up as much as maybe a Mortlock would to the casks. It's maybe a little bit more subtle than that. It's got a decent finish. Let's do one more sip and then we'll kind of wrap up the review part. I now understand, like, I don't know if I really stopped to appreciate this bottle quite as much as maybe I could have or should have on my way through it. And I do think it's because it doesn't scream like I'm different. It doesn't scream I'm this meaty, sulfury, big-time Scotch whiskey. There's subtlety to this. There's elegance to it. But it has its character. And coming back to this 46% unchill filter collection, I think that's what they're going for, right? They want the distillery character to be present. They want you to be able to tell that you're drinking that particular distillery, but it's in balance. It's not going to be that big, bold cask strength, out of left field, weird single cask that we can sometimes find that can either end up in something completely wonderful, something challenging, or maybe at times something that's just outright bad. All right, let's talk about score for a little bit. This one is... Yeah, this is in the 6 or 7 category. I think for the most part, I was going to give this a 6 out of 10. I kind of felt like, it's good. It drinks easily, but it doesn't necessarily have anything close to a hook that really kind of makes it stand out. Although I think that has started to change for me. I think it's tough to not give this a 7 out of 10. I'm thinking back to last week's review where we reviewed the Thompson Brothers TB BSW, the blended Scotch whiskey from them, which was also a sherry forward whiskey. And I gave that a 7 out of 10. And I think I actually like this one at least as much as that. I think I like that one. Was almost maybe even more straightforward, maybe more of a crowd pleaser. This one at least has a little bit of a like, oh, what's that? A little bit of a savory quality to it. So I think, yeah, I don't think I can give this one less than a 7 out of 10. It doesn't, but it still doesn't reach an 8 for me because it is still a little bit straightforward. It is going to be, if you like sherry whiskey, you're going to like this. If you like Mortlock, you're going to like this, especially if you can pick this up for a good price. So I'm going to give this thing a 7 out of 10, which is very good. And yeah, let's talk about value real quick. So according to my records, I paid $64 for this. That probably does not include the shipping that got passed over here. If I were going to pay for this in the States, I would expect this to be somewhere in the $69.99 to $79.99 plus tax range, given which is putting it maybe slightly above your standard 10 to 12-year-old introductory bottlings. I think this would be really well served if it were able to, if K&L were to do something like this at, say, like $59.99 plus tax. I think now you're coming in right at that price point or even less. I was trying to think of some comparisons here, and one that I thought of, because I've been thinking about opening it. Last year I did buy a second bottle of the Glenturret 12-year-old. I think I had the 2020... It wasn't the maiden release, it was the year after, so I think that was 2021, and I really enjoyed that one. I know that the maiden release, I think, which was 2020, got just utterly fantastic reviews, probably had some older Scotch whiskey in there. So I picked another one up last year, and I just haven't opened it yet. It's been sitting there kind of staring me in the face. Certainly in the fall, maybe when we're in the middle of summer right now, so the heavily sherried whiskeys aren't necessarily screaming my name at the moment, but that's $90 here. So even if this is $79.99, you're getting this for $10 less, and I think that would be a little bit high. I think $69.99 would probably be the limit for this, given that Benrinnes isn't a super well-known distillery, so they're not going to be selling out immediately. So I think it's a good value. This is a very good value. However, then I was thinking that while I was complaining that the BSW from Thompson Brothers was $55, And I think these two whiskeys are actually pretty similar in quality. I think I prefer this one slightly more, but that one is probably going to be at least $10 to $15 less than this. And I was kind of upset that the BSW costs what it costs, because it shouldn't cost that much. So I don't know. It's hard. It doesn't make any sense. Value is this weird equation that I just don't even like. I don't like talking about, but you have to. You got to try to sort through the mess. But this whiskey's probably a really good value at that $60 price point. And the Thompson Brothers, if that's around, it's, again, you're probably going to find that they're in 5 to 10% degrees of center from each other. So again, it's not a bad whiskey. The BSW was a good whiskey. They both get 7s. Price wise, I wouldn't pay much more than $70 plus tax for this, unless you're super curious or you know that you just absolutely love sherry forward Benrinnes. But I think $60 is probably a little bit better of a deal there. But I think that these Signatory on chill filter collections are usually really safe buys at the 46%. And if you can get them for a good price, they're usually really safe quality bottles at least. And then you can find some that are just utterly fantastic. But if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I hope you liked it. So hit the like button below. And if it's your first time watching, please hit the sub button. We'll be back next week with another whiskey review here on Whiskey Uncorked. Thank you once again, and cheers.